welcome back to my channel. It is time for the next installment in my Pearson Comprehensive Guide series. This is always voted on by my patrons, so if you would like to vote, be sure to check out my Patreon and look for the poll to go up there. But this month, my patrons decided to vote on something that I don't know a whole lot about, so it did require a lot of research and a lot of queasiness that went along with it. But as you can tell from the title of today's video, this Pearson Comprehensive Guide is going to be all about dermal piercings, or just dermals as they sometimes are referred to. Now, just to preface this, the only thing that I know about dermals, or the only thing that I knew before research, I've already done some research, so I know stuff now. But before I did research, I didn't know too much about dermals, other than the fact that I did contemplate getting them at one point, but just figured that I'd be too clumsy to get it done and like would immediately rip one out. I'd get it caught on something, immediately rip it out. So I was like, probably not the best thing for me to do personally, but I still love how they look. Now I knew that they were done completely different compared to other piercings, and let me tell you, after some of the videos I watched, 10 out of 10, don't recommend going to do that yourself. Watching the videos, I mean. But now that I know a little bit more about dermals and how they have definitely changed over the years, we've got a comprehensive guide for you. So as always, these comprehensive guides have 5 categories. This one's gonna be a little bit different because some of these categories I cannot find a whole lot of information on. I'm working with what I found. And if anyone that has a dermal piercing at the end of this video wants to chime in and give their kind of like insight, please do so. Those 5 categories are: what is a dermal piercing? Procedure and pain of getting a dermal piercing. The healing and aftercare of a dermal. Jewelry sizing for a dermal, which is kind of weird, as well as jewelry options. So those are the 5 categories. That's what we're gonna run through. Again, this is all research. None of this is based on experience, so we're working with what the internet gave me. So what exactly is a dermal? Dermal piercing, may even hear it referred to as an anchor piercing, or a dermal anchor. There's a lot of different ways to refer to it. What exactly is it? A dermal piercing is also known as a single point piercing. There is one singular entrance. That's it. There's no in and out. It's just in. There are no separate exit or entry points. This type of piercing lies flat against the skin. You'll see them in a variety of different areas over the body. Most commonly, you'll find some on fingers. You'll find some like right here on the chest. Sometimes you'll get it on the back of the neck. There are a lot of different areas people get them in. I've seen them along the collarbones, seen them on wrists, a lot of different areas. What exactly the dermal piercing is, it's a type of piercing that is inserted through a hole that the piercer creates. This should also not be confused with a surface piercing. A surface piercing is a completely different type of piercing. They're totally separate things. So now that you know exactly what we're talking about, and believe me, I will have pictures over here just to clarify some things, what is the procedure and pain of getting a dermal piercing done? From here on out, I'm going to refer to it as a dermal piercing just because that flows with my comprehensive guide formats. But again, they have a lot of different names. So a dermal piercing can be created 2 different ways. One with a dermal punch, or with a needle that you would see with other piercings. It seems like a lot of piercers are getting away from the dermal punches and are mostly using just regular old needles to create the opening. However, there are still some places that use dermal punches, so if you go to get a dermal piercing done, don't think, oh, they're using a punch, but I heard that needles are mostly used now. That's just a preference thing. It just seemed like the majority were using needles now. Either way, both methods go about making a hole in your skin, making a little opening so that the jewelry can be inserted. Placement is key when it comes to dermal piercings. You heard me talk about it earlier about how you can find dermals pretty much all over the body. Not every placement is good. It may look good, but it's not gonna end up being good. So when you're deciding on where exactly to get a dermal done, you're gonna wanna pick an area that doesn't really get a whole lot of traffic, or maybe some friction that happens with it. So say, for example, you wanted to get a dermal on one of your fingers. You're gonna get a lot of like traffic. And by what I mean by that is a lot's going on with your fingers. You're doing all sorts of things with your fingers all the time. Washing your hands is one thing. You're gonna wanna pick an area that doesn't see as much activity, which is why a lot of people do tend to go with like the back of the neck, or even right in the dead center of the chest. However, there are things there that could irritate something right there, or on the back of the neck. So really, The decision comes down to where do you notice an area that you would be interested in getting this done that doesn't really see much action. So that's pretty much how it's done. They either take a punch or a needle, they kind of insert it. It's hard to describe. You can go look up videos if you want. I will say it made me pretty queasy to watch it done because there was a lot of blood. So proceed with caution when going to look for videos, but basically they take a punch or a needle, put the needle in. It's almost like, you know, when you decore an apple. That's kind of what it is. It's like just making this opening. So pain-wise, it does seem to depend on the area that you're getting it done in. I asked on Instagram, this is what I do anytime I do one of these comprehensive guides for something that I don't personally have. And I didn't get as many responses, which I expected, but the responses that I got were all over the place. Majority of people said that it hurt really bad, but then there were a few in there that said it wasn't bad at all. And so it did seem like it came down to placement. Now, when I did compile these numbers together, the average was about a 7 out of 10. So that's pretty up there, but still not the highest it could be. And again, if you really want to see how these are done, go look up videos on YouTube. There are plenty of them. However, the ones I looked at all contained a lot of blood, and I felt very nauseous afterwards. But I also just have a really easily upset stomach. All right, so now that you kind of sort of know how they're done, healing and aftercare. How do you care for one? Well, this is where I actually knew how to care for one. You care for it the same way that you care for any of your other piercings. Yay! Something similar. Much like other piercings, there was a wide range on how long this can take to heal. Again, I do believe it depends on placement. So from what I gathered, these types of piercings take about 2 to 6 months to heal, but could take longer, especially in areas that get a lot of action, get a lot of traffic, get a lot of friction. So it all comes down to placement. But the average was about 2 to 6 months. These can be very difficult to heal just because of products that may come in contact with it. So again, if you get a dermal on a finger, you gotta wash your hands. That might end up irritating it some. Maybe you accidentally use hand sanitizer, completely forgot about it, gets on there, that could irritate it some. This is just an example, but products or even just like clothing rubbing against it could prolong the healing process. These are also prone to scarring and rejection. So just keep that in mind that if you want to get one, but then eventually want to take it out, they are more prone to heavy scarring and rejection, meaning that the scar might be a little bit more noticeable than say if you took an ear piercing out and that scar be invisible. It's going to end up being a little bit more visible than say my labret that I took out. You can hardly notice this one now, whereas with a dermal might be a little bit more noticeable. So to care for one, you're going to use pretty much the standard for caring for any piercing. So you can do either a pre-made saline salt solution or a homemade one. If you use a pre-made one, you can do something like H2 Ocean or NeilMed. I always prefer NeilMed, but H2 Ocean is fine if that's what you have. You spray it onto the site, kind of let it soak, rinse it off, go about your day. Also with the dermal, it might be a little bit easier to like rinse and everything. So like say you've got a dermal on your wrist, you can easily just spray it and then rinse it off. Now, if you're going to make your own, be sure that you're doing the correct measurements, using the correct ingredients. So if you're gonna make your own, the appropriate amounts of everything is 8 ounces of distilled or bottled water. Do not use tap water. There's stuff in tap water that can irritate a piercing. So 8 ounces of that mixed with 1/8 to 1/4 of a teaspoon of non-iodized sea salt. Needs to be non-iodized. I get questions about that all the time. It needs to be non-iodized. You mix it together, make it into a watery solution. You can either then take a Q-tip or you can put it directly onto the site. Like say you have it in a shot glass and you've got right here, just hold it up to it, tip it back, let it soak for a little bit, and then remove it. Now again, a lot of people do not like the use of Q-tips. The big issue with Q-tips are the fibers that can come off of it. I personally have never had problems with Q-tips with any of my piercings. That being said, you do need to be conscious of it because you may not see the little fibers until it's too late and you're like, why is my piercing irritated? There are fibers wrapped around the jewelry. So if you're gonna use something other than just directly from where you mixed your salt solution in, if you're gonna use something like a Q-tip, you just need to be mindful. Remember, you don't need to be cleaning these multiple times a day. 2 to 3 times is plenty. I always say 2 times, once in the morning, once in the evening, but if you notice crusties throughout the day, you can clean it a 3rd time a day. Just kind of get it away. As always, don't use things like alcohol, Neosporin, or Bactine. For starters, Bactine tells you on their website to not use them on a piercing. I think if the brand is telling you not to use their product on something, probably best not to use it. Alcohol products dry out the skin. You don't want that. Neosporin prevents oxygen from getting to the site, which is necessary for it to heal. Neosporin also clogs the puncture wound, so keep in mind this is technically a puncture wound. It clogs it and won't allow it to drain like it needs to. All of these things are also just way too harsh for a brand new piercing or just a piercing in general. Don't mess with the jewelry. This should go without saying. Don't mess with any brand new piercing. Just leave it alone. Clean it. Just leave it be. Definitely needs to be said for dermals just because of how iffy they can be and prone to rejection and prone to scarring. Just leave it alone. Remember that it's there so that you don't accidentally do harm to it, but just leave it alone. Now, before we move on to jewelry options for a dermal, I do want to state that from what I found in my research, if you plan to ever remove a dermal piercing, do not do it yourself. You will most likely regret trying to do it yourself. If you want to remove it, go to a professional. If you attempt to remove it yourself, this can lead to even more scarring. Can also be extremely painful because I'll explain when we get to the jewelry options why it will be painful. But professional piercers have tools on how to remove it safely and as least painful as possible, because if you try and remove it yourself, it's going to be pretty painful. So just, I wanted to put that in there. Don't try and remove one of these yourself. Other piercings you can definitely remove yourself. Don't try and remove a dermal one. All right, so jewelry sizing. Jewelry for dermals is a little strange. So it did seem like the universal size for dermals is a 14 gauge. So the 14 gauge refers to like the thread pattern. So I'll insert a picture of what typical jewelry for a dermal piercing looks like. It's the little part that like sticks out. It's connected to the anchor part that goes under the skin, and then it's the part that sticks out. You put the little decorative piece on top. That's the sizing. So that is typically a 14 gauge. So if you're wanting to change out the little top part, you're gonna look for something that's 14 gauge. You may come across 16, 12, anything, but the standard seems to be 14. Again, this is best used for changing out tops. Now, jewelry options. So when it comes to dermal piercings, you have dermal anchors and dermal tops. Anchors are go under the skin, tops are go on top of the skin. Anchors can be what's referred to as footed or rounded. So footed, they're gonna be like long, shaped long and rounded, whereas just rounded is gonna be circular. Again, I'll insert pictures over here so that you know exactly what I'm talking about. So what's unique about the jewelry for dermals is that they have holes in them. I wish I had something to show you right now, but as I said, I don't have a dermal piercing, so I can't really. But in the pictures, you'll be able to see there are holes in the footed part of dermal jewelry. So what these holes allow for and why it's called an anchor, because when it's inserted under the skin, these anchors, these holes, allow for your skin to grow around them and firmly hold the jewelry in place. I'll give you a moment for your stomach to settle. It's wild to me. It's pretty dang cool when you think about it, but it also makes me sick to my stomach to think about. But that allows the dermal piercing to be more sturdy in place. It's gonna hold it a little bit better. Because I'll talk about how people's dermal jewelry just like came right on out. And it's because it didn't really have a grip on it because the skin wasn't able to grow around it and it just slips right on out. So then when it comes to the top part that goes with the bottom part, you're gonna wanna find something that is flat. There are gonna be dermal tops out there that are rounded, but you want to avoid those because it can cause more friction against the piercing, against the skin, and it can also cause lopsidedness. So then the anchors might heal like at an angle and then the dermal will be at an angle. So you want something that's a little bit more flat, sits right up against the skin and doesn't cause any extra friction because it's right there, right against the skin. So you don't have too many options when it comes to dermals. Basically, the main thing you have an option with is a footed or a rounded anchor. And then you do have either a rounded or a flat dermal top. However, it is definitely recommended to go for the flat top. So there you have it. Some information about dermal piercings, dermal anchors, anchor piercings, dermals, anchors, however you want to refer to it as. These can be stunning, and sometimes like I see little designs made with multiples. I love the ones that you see on people's faces, like right against the cheek, but some of the videos I watched, y'all, have made it so I will never personally get one. Let me know in the comments below a few things. One, do you have one? If you have one, tell us your experience with it. What has it been like? Did you have one and you no longer have one? Good or bad experience? Are you thinking about getting one? What's stopping you from getting getting one. Again, these seem like a very wild piercing, but I personally love how they look. They're definitely one that you need to be mindful of more so than others. It's not to say that other piercings can't be finicky, but these definitely seem like they need a little bit more attention and a little bit more work. But let me know in the comments below your experiences with dermals, whether you have one personally, been thinking about getting one, know someone with one. Let us know. Special thank you to my patrons. You can help support the channel on Patreon while having access to videos early, viewing patron-only content, and more. That is it for this video. If you enjoyed it, please give it a big thumbs up. Go on down there, hit that subscribe button, and don't forget to hit that notification bell so that YouTube will let you know when I upload next. But until next time, bye all!